In what ways would this organization benefit from hiring you?
Well, I have quite a bit of experience in a number of different fields in relationship to your company. I know your company does a lot of hands-on work with a lot of the customers that you work with. You go out to the facilities, the factories, the industries that the people that you employ, that you work for. You actually go there and you talk to them and you get testimonials, and I am very familiar with those factories. I've worked in them myself. I know how they work, a lot of them. I have a lot of experience actually working on the assembly line, or stocking the shelves of the stores. And so I know a lot about the industry itself, and I know what they want to advertise, and I know what people want advertised to them as far as their own businesses go. So I can bring a lot to the table as far as creative strategy, because I actually understand a lot of the businesses that you work with.
Okay. Describe a solution in which you found your results were not up to your expectations. What happened? What action did you take?
Well, there was a time when I had spoke with a number of individuals on the phone about my issues as far as sales goes, because I was supposed to, as part of my job when I worked for a different company over the phone sales, it was also customer service. And I was supposed to fix their problems and work on the accounts for an insurance company over the phone out of a call center. But the problem is that they also wanted you to sell these at-home kits, these like medical testing kits that we were supposed to sell to them when we talked to them. We were supposed to try to get everybody to buy one. And, it was supposed to be beneficial, but I felt like it was unnecessary for a lot of the healthier individuals that I spoke with. They didn't need this kit, and it could be potentially expensive to them, depending on what their plan covered. And I didn't want them to have to deal with that, and then it was also complicated. So there was a lot of issues that I had personally, and so it kind of got in the way of my job, though, because in reality my job was also to sell those kits. So in hindsight, my actions, over the phone, from, sort of not promoting the product like I should have been, was my fault, and it cost me to, not make nearly as much commissions, and not rise to the expectations that the company was looking for. They had a metric of sales that they needed to get for these kits, and I was not helping that, and I was making things worse. So, I know now that I need to put the company first, and regardless of my, my personal ethics, and, there's of course a line, as with everything, but, it's not a big deal to get a kit. They probably would have helped a lot of them, is the reality of the situation. They might have actually needed it. So I should have tried harder. So I did learn something there.
Okay. Can you provide an example of where you used outstanding communication skills?
Gotcha. The same place I worked at, the insurance company, actually had a pretty good situation happen where I had spoke with a couple over the phone, an elderly couple. I worked with Medicaid patients, so it was a lot of elderly individuals. But in this particular case, it was an elderly gentleman, and he had been calling in to try to fix some stuff, and his wife was trying to talk to him in the background, but I couldn't really hear at first. It was hard to make out. And he kept trying to talk to me about the account, and we were fixing a couple things, and I eventually heard his wife. She was telling him to tell me about something, that you need to tell him about the thing. And I said, after a little bit more talking to him, I kind of, I've had a little bit of experience. I asked him, I heard your wife in the background. I didn't want to, assume or interrupt or anything, but what was she talking about? And he said, well, I didn't really want to tell you about it, but my wife here keeps insisting that, that I tell you about it. And anyway, I got this kind of, little lump on my arm, that has been kind of annoying me, bothering me. But it's no big deal, I'm sure it'll go away, you know what I mean? But my wife keeps telling me that it's a problem, that I should talk to a doctor, but I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't want to deal with that, And I asked him, well, it's totally understandable, because I hate going to the doctor too. And I kept talking to him and actually having a real conversation with him. This wasn't just about solving a problem on his account. This is about having a real heart-to-heart conversation with another person and actually trying to get to know them. And after a while, he started opening up to me, and he told me a bit more about his family and his life. And I asked him, after a bit, I asked him again, about that. And I said, I understand how hard it is to go to the doctor, but, I try to listen to my wife when she tells me stuff, because she's a pretty smart lady. And I was joking to him about that, and I said, if she's telling you to go to the doctor, maybe you should just listen to your wife. I hate to say it, but they're usually right. And he was laughing. We'd already made a connection, so he knew I was kind of just poking at him. But at the same time, I was genuinely worried about him, of course, because that sounded like, something. I'm not a doctor, but that sounded could be bad, And so eventually, after a bit more of this, he said, I think you got me convinced. I'll go in. I'll have my wife take me in, and we'll see what we can do. I'm sure it's nothing, but maybe I'll look at it. And I said, well, I appreciate you doing that. I'm sure it's nothing too, but I trust my wife. So I went ahead and finished up the conversation pretty shortly after that. We'd fixed everything for the most part by that point. And after a few days, I was talking to my boss, my supervisor, and she said that someone had called in and had told them about the situation, and that it turns out that lump was cancerous, and that if it hadn't been removed soon, that he was probably going to get cancer. Like, it would have been really bad. But because it was really early, it was like, I'm not a doctor again, but it was like, it hadn't started forming yet, it hadn't started the damage yet, so they had enough time to remove it without hurting him, and he was fine. And I'll always remember him, because there's a recording of it that my supervisor had me listen to, and I'll always remember him saying on the recording, thank you, Josh, for making me go, because I had no idea it was that bad, and, you might have actually just saved me. And I had that, thank you kind of framed on my cubicle for the rest of the time that I worked there. Because it's not about, I mentioned the medical kicks in the previous question, but it's not about the medical kicks to me. It's about talking to people, and in this case, I maybe saved somebody's life. So that's, I feel like that's probably some of the most outstanding communication that I've had.
Describe a situation where you worked with a group of people to accomplish a project or a task.
There's a lot. It's always hard to work, in a group, but I would say the easiest one for me is working in a kitchen in general, because you have to work as a team in a kitchen. I'm sure a lot of people have worked in one at some point in their life, but I worked at the Eagle Drive-In with my good friend Micah, and we would always get into a good flow state when we would show up early and do the morning prep work, before the store opened, get potatoes cut, get everything boiling, get everything out of the freezers and into where they need to be, get everything cut and chopped, get everything done before, so that way when all the orders start coming in, that everything's already ready. Otherwise, the kitchen obviously just doesn't work. But that requires a lot of teamwork. But even more so, whenever it is super busy, you gotta be watching everybody in the kitchen. You gotta know what they need next. You got to be reading the orders. You got to be helping the host out. You got to go out and check the tables and clear the tables sometimes if there's just too much going on. Everybody has to be communicating and working together as a team. And I feel like just in general, if you can't have that in a kitchen, that the cogs, those individual gears that just don't work are going to eventually just not be a part of that kitchen anymore because, especially at higher end restaurants, you need a lot of. I mean, I'm not gonna say the Eagle Drive-In was the fanciest restaurant in town, but it was, back in its time, it was a pretty fancy restaurant. I know a lot of fancier and people went there, and it was a nice bar, as well. They had a lot of fancy alcohols and stuff. So, I know from what I remember, there were some very very busy days, where. One person would be putting the bun on, the other person would slap the cheese on, the other person would be, grabbing everything else, and the other person would be slapping it on a plate. It'd be 4 different people working on one order because that's how fast you need to be going. And I'd say that's probably the best example I can give of my teamwork skills is being able to coordinate with that many people.
Tell me about a time where you have been creative or innovative in your work. What was the situation and what did you do?
Well, I think the best example of that would be when I worked at a different call center. It was called Communication Solutions, and what we did there is we sold internet, cable, and phone products. And it takes a bit of explanation, but essentially, we would learn about all the products. We'd go through a training class, and then they put us out on the sales floor. We kind of swam with the sharks. We'd watch the really really good salesmen, get a whole bunch of sales, and we'd have to figure it out. And of course, they try to help give us advice, and a lot of it just came down to, learning the sales techniques and understanding how to sell things more than even product knowledge. But of course, product knowledge is important too. But as far as a particular creative and innovative strategy, I was actually the number one salesman for all of the entire campaign, for the entire company that I worked for, Communication Solutions. For I think it was 3 months in a row, I was the number one salesman for everybody. And the reason why is because of a number of reasons, but the main reason was that I was good. I feel like I was good at talking to people. I have been a big experience in the industry, but more importantly than that, I figured out how to do something that nobody else really had done, and I would call this particularly innovative or creative. And what it was is our system. You see, they had a very complex, older Windows system, operating system. Not even operating system. It was just a software program, is what I mean. And you could access it to put in the orders for the accounts and manipulate people's accounts overall, connect their services, do a whole bunch of crazy stuff. You could put a credit card on their account. You could bill their account. You could add new phone lines. You could add different channels for their cable service. You could take some away. You could do any number of things. But of course, a lot of the times on the program that I worked on, the goal was to either retain, because see, I worked on an inbound campaign, which means that people would call us. So I would be always sitting waiting for someone to call in. And so the way that it worked is these people would be upset or have an issue that needed resolved with their current service a lot of the time. And so my goal was to retain the business, make sure they're not going to cancel on us, by fixing their problem, making sure they're happy, getting them what they want, doing the customer service stuff I'm supposed to do. But the other goal of it was to also, at the same time, if they've only got like one service and if we sell them internet and cable and they just have internet, sell them some cable. If we can get them to add a service on and fix their problem, that's a win for everybody. So that was one of the really big goals that we would focus on in that campaign. And that was how a lot of the times that was the sales, is when we would get them to add stuff on. So the reason that my strategy, I think, worked so well is I got to learn the system itself really well. I understood how to put in the orders. I knew how to make the system work properly. I knew how to fix errors that would pop up. I really sat down and studied the computer systems, and I learned how they worked and the right, like if, if this error code popped up, I knew that they put this in wrong, and I knew how to go back and fix it. I could change it to what it needed to be. If they put this in the wrong way, or if they forgot to add something, I knew exactly what it was, and I can go back and fix it really fast. So instead of it taking me 30 minutes to work my way through an order, it would take me 10 minutes, and I would sell them something because I knew how to work the system really fast, and I can fix problems that, and this is really the most common sale that I got, where I would get somebody else that had been talking to, I've had it where it was literally another one of our sales agents in the same building, that they didn't know how to fix it, and I did. So they would be mad because so nobody else could fix their problem with their account because something weird had happened, or the system had glitched, or they tried to do something weird. Who knows? But I would go back in and look at it, and I would be able to fix it when nobody else could fix it because I understood the system really well. And so I would get them their order that they've been demanding this whole time so I could get them what they wanted. And a lot of the time, that's what it came down to in terms of getting sales and doing the job. So the reason I was the number one salesman is because I learned those ins and outs of the system, and I studied it really well. And I would say that's probably a pretty creative strategy that I had.